Hi, my name is Courtney Terry, and this is Arts Alive, produced and sponsored by Meadow Lake Studios. And my guest today is Noah Norwood, the owner, founder of HRK Designs, and you build, rebuild classic cars.
Yep. So I'm a hot rodder, metal shaper. So basically what we do is I have a customer who comes to me with their classic car, usually about 1965 and older, and they bring it to me to fix it all up and a lot of times customize it and completely rebuild it to be something that's totally one-off to them. So it's a lot of fun.
I can imagine with classic cars, I mean, I have a 2009 and I have problems finding parts for it sometimes. So I can imagine when you're rebuilding a car, you kind of even more difficulty with that.
So it really, you'd be surprised. There are some parts, like in this book, when I built the 1927 Model T, there is a fair amount of parts for these older cars to support the industry and all the hobbyists. But then again, there's also all the parts that you don't have. And that's where a lot of my work comes in, which is rebuilding all of these custom body panels to look like it was from the factory, that you can't buy them anymore, so you have to custom make them.
Right, and you were showing me some of the pictures from the book about the Model T where you kind of made modifications so that it would ride.
Absolutely, yeah. We can.
You were saying ride lower or...
Yeah, so some of this stuff from this book here, this is a 1927 Model T that I just recently worked on. So this is the way it came to me, all rusty and super tall and stuff like that. And then this right here, Greg Macy, who was on the show, he did the rendering of this. So we worked with our customer to figure out, not only do we want to fix it up, but we want to make it sit low and chop the top. You can see that's the line of what it used to be like, and we got it to sit low like a hot rod to make it go faster and look cooler and all that stuff. So it's a process of just chopping metal up and shaping things in a thing called an English wheel to be able to get shape to it. So we can customize things. So you can see here, we have this, which this panel's all beat up. This panel down here was completely gone, and it's just a process of shaping the metal to where we can recreate it to where, I think it's on this next page here, you can see now it completely blends together and looks like it's always been there.
That's so cool. Yeah, and it feels like it looks very authentic for all that it is made with some more modern pieces.
And then along the lines of customizing things, you can see a stock 1927 Model T had this really, really tall roof, and you can see this door here where we started to chop it down. And that's something that they started to do all the way back in the 1940s, as guys would come back from World War II, and they'd find all these old cars, and they'd chop them down and then channel it. Another thing is the frame sits about right here, and I cut the floor away so the car could sit over the frame, which makes it sit even lower. So all of these different things that date back all the way to the 40s of ways that you can customize cars for whatever reason you might want to. So
that's so cool. And so you mentioned you're from McMinnville, born and raised.
Yeah.
Where did you get started learning all this metalworking and classic cars?
When I was 2 years old, my dad had a 1951 GMC pickup. And that just had so many childhood memories of him working on it and helping him build it and riding around in the loud V8 and all that stuff and going to car shows. And from then on, I was just obsessed with these classic cars and older cars. And then I'd say probably when I was in high school, it kind of reignited again, and that's when I started to get really into it. And I ended up having some friends over here in McMinnville as well, the Emerys. And they were kind of the ones who made me realize you can have a business doing this, and there's this whole industry of people who build cars for people. And so probably from the time I was 14 until now, that's always been the dream of being able to own a businthe and just do it every day.
That's amazing. Yeah. And you do have the first piece that you...
Yeah, so this here is all the pieces of metal you see here, they all start out as just completely flat sheets of metal. Okay. And sheet metal, it's a lot like paper. So if you could imagine taking a sheet of paper and you tried to form it around a basketball, you'd have wrinkles in it and it wouldn't want to just lay flat. Sheet metal is the same exact way, except things we can do to it is we can stretch it or shrink it, which makes it have this dome shape here. So for this one, I ran it through the English wheel, which is basically this big, it's almost like a rolling pin. And what that does is it stretches the center out, and then I have a shrinker that I can shrink on the insides, and it basically forms this dome.
Oh, wow.
But this here is the first piece that I ever shaped. And using the same exact practices that I used to make this piece, you can then transition into making whole entire pieces like this.
Right, what is this?
So this is one of the newest cars I'm working on right now. It's a 67 Mustang Fastback.
Oh, okay.
And so what this is a fender flare for the outside. So this basically attaches to the outside right where the wheel well is, and it allows us to put a way bigger tire in the back. So there's a lot of different history behind it, that certain race cars, they'd put these big wide body fender kits on there to get big racing tires in there. And so that's kind of the idea that we're going for here, is we want to have the kind of that classic race car look with the big wide tires and wide fenders on there. So
yeah, well, and it sounds like you really get to stretch your creativity a bit, because you're working kind of with these classic cars that have the structure and they have the form, but then you're talking with a client who may have a custom idea about.
Absolutely. That's really what is so much fun that I enjoy about metal shaping, is this fender flare here. This piece never existed before, and you can't buy anything like this. And this was just something that I was able to imagine in my head and then turn it into reality. And it's hard to beat something like that, when you can imagine a shape or look at a car and imagine the way you might want it to look instead, and you can actually totally change the way something looks. That's what I enjoy the most.
You mentioned before filming that you weren't, like, in terms of like the drawings and the art wasn't really your thing, but I am seeing so much artistic ability, especially being able to take something kind of 2D in your mind and
it's definitely fun, and it's also one of those crafts to where I almost explain it kind of like a martial art. So what I'm able to do here, this is like white belt. And so to some people it might be impressive, but there's black belts and there's degrees of black belts. So this level of what I'm able to do, if you see what other people are capable of, it is just leaps and bounds, which is really motivating, because you're able to always know that there's a higher level to attain and you can always get better. And I look at this and I see all the areas that I could fix and do better at, but then I look back to when I started with just this piece.
Right.
It's so much more than I could do back then. So it's an ever-evolving craft.
Yeah, well, and I mean, knowing just we have the Drag the Gut every summer, so I feel like you have quite a community of car enthusiasts in the area,
it is,
too.
For sure. Yeah, many people are surprised. McMinnville and just the Yamhill County area has a really, really big classic car culture. So that's been another thing that has been able to really be well for my business, is all these guys around here have all these old cars. And I'd say just recently am I kind of starting to branch out of the Yamhill County area and a little bit outside of Oregon, some people out of state that come to bring their car in as well. So.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
And so I'm curious about like the custom work. What kinds of things? I mean, is part of it adding some maybe modern conveniences and comforts to older vehicles?
Absolutely.
Or what kind of custom things do you do?
Like with this Mustang here, actually the reason why I was a little bit late today, we have a motor that's from a 2017 Mustang, and we're going to put it in a 1967 Mustang.
Oh, cool.
And then it has all this modern suspension, like coilovers and rack and pinion steering. So that way you're in a 1967 Mustang, but it's going to drive like a new Mustang, and it's going to have all this drivability and air conditioning and heating.
Oh, nice.
It's going to be really comfortable to drive. So we do that as well. And then I also like doing some stuff that is what they call period correct, to where you build the whole entire car. You pick an era, and you build the whole entire car as if somebody in 1947 was to build that car. That's another super fun thing to do.
Oh, wow.
So
How do you even begin with that?
So it's a lot of studying old magazines and studying the way that they did things, because hot rodding really has all these different eras, kind of like music. You can listen to a song and you go, that's an 80s song, or that's a 70s song. It's kind of the same idea as if you wanted to recreate a song that sounded like it came from the 70s. You can do the same exact thing with cars as well. Oh, so this Mustang, we're building it like a brand new car, you know, modern to what the taste is today. But another thing you could do is recreate an era of something.
Oh, that's amazing. And you had mentioned that your shop is located just a little outside of town in Whiteson.
Yep. So out there on my parents' property, we have a nice little acre of property, which works well because a lot of this metal shaping stuff, it's very loud. We're banging hammers together. We're grinding on stuff. You know,
enough.
Loud motors are going off, and so it helps to be outside in the country a little bit and don't bother the neighbors as much with all of our loud noises.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And do you have, you know, a community of other people like you who are doing the restoration and new creation?
Absolutely, yeah. So that's where social media has been a huge deal. So beforehand, to get into this industry, you really had to be in Southern California to kind of have significance. It was hard to get your name out there. With Instagram today, I'm in contact with people in SoCal and just all over the country. There are these top-level people in the industry that if I had grown up in a time without social media, I wouldn't have access to that. So it's really, really crazy. That's what's been able to help me get even better at the craft is you take somebody who, like I was explaining to you, is a black belt, and I can just send them a text message or an Instagram DM, and they'll help me out with a question or something that I'm struggling on. So that's definitely been a huge part of my growth of my business and the growth of my skill set is having social media.
That's so cool. And then, so when you're building, are you, like, you do it like the basics and the frame and adjusting and do you get to kind of follow the car all the way through the process? So even to the, like, painting or
really,
tie?
Excuse me. It really just depends. So sometimes we'll just do one little piece. Somebody will come in and say, I just want you to chop the top. But then, like this Mustang here, we've had it all the way from the very beginning, and it's going to go all the way to the end. So a lot of what I also do is I don't paint or I don't do specific things, but I have all the connections. So somebody will say, hey, I don't want to deal with it. You just take it to all the places that it needs to go.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of a curator, if you will, of
Sure.
making sure it goes to all the right places. And in those cases, yes, I'd see it all the way through the end. So.
And working with, I mean, you're working with sheet metal, how, like in terms of the material, is it something you've just gotten used to? I mean, I'm looking at metal and it's like in order to like even just create these shapes, it seems like so much. And I guess, have you been able to you use more modern materials, but have you also gotten to work with maybe some like
different kinds of materials?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So the most common, like this right here, is 18 gauge, which is the thickness, and just regular mild steel. But there's also a whole lot of, especially European cars, where there's aluminum work and things like that. So I'd say the second most common for metal shaping and creating a body would be aluminum. I haven't done a whole lot of aluminum work, but it's definitely something I want to branch off into. But aluminum is definitely a lot easier to work with because it's so much softer. So if you imagine you're trying to stretch a piece of soft metal versus something like this, which is a lot harder, it's a lot easier as well. Yeah.
Do you find yourself working, is it mostly American designed cars, or do you find yourself working with European models?
I'm branching out into some of the European stuff as well. So here pretty soon I'll have a Porsche 911 that'll be coming in. And so some European stuff coming in. I'm a big Porsche guy as well. So yeah, I like the American stuff, but it's basically just whatever I find cool and whatever I want to work on. That when somebody comes to me with a project, I just say, yeah, that's something I'd like to do, or no, that's not exactly something that I might be fit to do the job for.
Well, and it sounds, a lot of people maybe wouldn't see the artistic side of it, but it sounds like, yeah, you have to use your creativity, you have to do research, and you have to know your topic, and you have to know all the things about how to make it look so authentic.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'd say that's probably the biggest difference between, I'll tell people I restore cars, because that's kind of what most people understand. But in reality, I hot rod cars and customize cars. Because if you restore a car, you have to recreate a panel exactly the way it looked, and everything has to look like it came from the factory. But what I like to do is customize something to where it can look whatever way I want. Same thing like we did with this Model T. The whole kind of bottom end was rotted out in a way, and I was able to recreate it just however I wanted it to look because it's a hot rod. So
yeah, that's so cool. And so for anyone interested in seeing more of your work, you mentioned you have a social media presence. Do you have how can people find more about you?
So I'm on Instagram as @TheHotRodKid.
Okay.
And then I'm on Facebook as HRK Design, and then website as well, hrkdesign.net. So if you type it into Google, you should be able to find my info on there.
That's cool. And people can see your past work and just find all
Absolutely.
sorts of things.
Yeah, that's usually, the website has some stuff, but the social media I keep updated just about every day of what's going on in the shop and what we're up to. So
that's so cool. Well, Noah, thank you so much for, I learned so much today about hot rod cars.
Yeah.
It's been so cool. And yeah,
absolutely.
best of luck and good luck with this Mustang. That's going to be really cool.
It's going to be fun.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Courtney Terry, and this has been Arts Alive.